Even before consecutive explosions in Lebanon's capital tore a path of death and destruction through the city, the country was already grappling with severe economic and political crises. Now the latest tragedy, combined with the pressure of a pandemic compounded by political corruption, have only exacerbated an already dire situation on the ground. Joining us now from Beirut is investigative journalist and founder of the news site BeirutReport.com, Habib Battah. Habib, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, you are on the ground in Beirut. What's the scene like there?
It's a scene that's hard to describe if you haven't been there, because it's like you're walking through a movie set of some giant, catastrophe of epic proportions. You're seeing for miles and miles buildings, every single window in high-rise buildings completely shattered. So if you can imagine that in your city, it's quite a shock to see the places that you have lived and known for so many years totally devastated, like some kind of end of the world type event is what it feels like down there. And it's just a real feeling of sadness. And so many buildings are falling apart. It's not just the port of Beirut. The port is an utter wasteland, totally devastated. Hundreds of containers, thousands of vehicles. Everything is destroyed for miles to see. As far as the eye can see, you can see destruction. And then you have the people trying to put their lives together. And we don't have any kind of emergency response in this country. We don't really have much of a government in this country. So people are just helping each other. And they're out there with hard hats and shovels, a lot of young people trying to do this task, which is really not meant for average civilians to do. And there are a lot of dangers of buildings that could collapse on them. So there's a lot of pain and sadness for all those who have lost. We keep seeing the videos of people who have died. We keep looking for friends of ours. We keep trying to check and think about who haven't we called yet. We're just kind of checking in on each other at this point in this country.
And tell us about that, what you just touched on, because we have heard that most of the cleanup efforts and rescue efforts and search efforts and recovery efforts are being done by volunteers. Where is the government in this, which is what a lot of people in the Western world are asking when they hear that?
Well, there are a lot of Western governments that are participating with the Lebanese government, the Lebanese army, at the actual blast zone, which is the port area. So the army and the other governments have been, working on this salvage operation mainly. So it's in the residential neighborhoods, though, that we don't really see much presence of any kind of organized effort. It's kind of just a real ad hoc effort between different Lebanese, nonprofit organizations and youth organizations that got their laptops out, and they're trying to, deliver aid to people and build databases of who's been affected. A lot of older folks. This is one of the oldest neighborhoods in Beirut, so the buildings were very old. One of the most beautiful and tourist areas. Everybody's been to this area, and that's one of the real shocking things. I mean, I've spent so much of my life, and probably, a million others have been in the vicinity of the port of Beirut in the last 6 years since these explosives have been sitting there. So it's really, you just kind of scratch your head thinking, it could have been me. So there's a lot of help needed. And yes, we're seeing mainly the governments, Lebanese and international, are focused on the port area and not so much the thousands. I mean, 200,000 or 300,000, somewhere around that vicinity of people have been made homeless. And you could just tell by almost probably 1 million pieces of glass frames have been shattered. And for people to afford rebuilding those glass frames is going to be very difficult, because people were already in a very deep hole in Lebanon. We had hyperinflation. People lost 80%. Value of their salaries. People weren't able to access their savings. We're in a Venezuela type scenario, and then we got hit with all of this. So it's a very difficult time, and people need a lot of help right now in this country.
Just looking at those scenes of destruction is remarkable. It's almost surreal. We all watched the day that those explosions happened, and people around the world watched as those explosions happened. Where were you when that happened? Can you describe the experience, what you saw, what you heard, and the chaos in the aftermath of it?
Yeah, again, I was very lucky. I look at my phone and I took a photograph of the port of Beirut just 15 minutes before the explosion happened. I was just driving by that area, and I happened to take a picture of a sign on the road, which I could see the port crane there. So I was very much could have been gone. I might not have been here today talking to you. I had just passed the port. The port lies on a major highway. Lebanon is also, and Beirut is one of the most populated and densely populated cities in the world. So the port is just right in there, right in that residential area, and the highway runs right across it. And I was driving across the highway. I just passed it. I pulled over a couple of miles down the road, and then I heard initial boom. I looked at the skies. I thought we were being bombed because we've been bombed so many times in this country. I don't know how many countries have seen the amount of tons of bombs that Lebanon has seen over the past 30, 40 years. So we immediately looked to the skies. We thought we were being attacked by an Israeli jet, which we've been attacked by so many times in the past. I couldn't see anything. I kept walking casually down the street, and then my whole body moved. It's as if the sky folded in half. This enormous cracking noise that everyone thought it happened to them. Everybody thought the bomb happened to their house or their building. Again, because Beirut is so densely populated that the noise reverberated in so many directions. The sound wave did so much damage to people 5 miles away or more. And it was heard in Cyprus, which is 150 miles away.
Mm. You mentioned how densely populated that area is, that port area especially. Talk to us a bit more about the human toll and the devastation people are facing and the greatest challenges going forward here when we talk about recovery. What are the long-term challenges with even food coming in to the country at this point, seeing as the port was hit? So when it comes to getting imports as well into the country, what are the long-term challenges here?
Well, I mean, a country like Lebanon, which is a very small country that doesn't have a lot of manufacturing, really the port is a lifeline to the economy and people's daily bread. And literally the strategic wheat silos of the country were eviscerated. There was, months of wheat there that was just fell into the sea and is melting into the sea right now. And so, losing a port is the engine of the economy, and an economy that was already in tatters. And Lebanon was in a $100 billion plus hole before all of this happened, because in large part because the country hasn't been able to get back together from the previous wars it's been through. And so you see the new damage, and you see the old bullet holes from the 80s and the 90s, and so many different layers of bullet holes in this city. And a lot of the debt that we have is because of reconstruction. We're constantly trying to rebuild this city. So in many ways, it's like the people here don't really get any relief. They're very angry with the government. But we should also note that our government doesn't function in some way because the world tends to view Lebanon as a chessboard. And the really rich and powerful countries in this world tend to pick different Lebanese factions that they throw their support behind them. And that includes the Western countries and Iran and Saudi Arabia and the United States. All of these countries really invest a lot in war in Lebanon and trying to settle scores between them. So I think there's a lot of blame to go around for why we are in this state of dysfunction in Lebanon. I think a lot of people have to ask their own governments what they have contributed to the Middle East recently, because Lebanon really feels every war in the Middle East and every conflict, we're right kind of smack in the middle. Very hard to build a country in these circumstances.
Some very good questions to ask in a crisis that is certainly not going away anytime soon. Habib Battah, of the news site BeirutReport.com. Thank you so much for joining us with your insight. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.